The type of training when I have and when I'm working, especially with the over 50 population, is what they are calling polarized approach to training. So simply put, it's most of the training is at a pretty low level, what we would call zone 2 training, right around the fat bump. And the reason that's so important is you get great benefit from spending time there on the bike, on the run, whatever. When you're in zone 2, you're not creating a whole lot of abuse. You're at a very tolerable level of intensity. You're optimizing some of these aerobic systems, which will make you a little bit more, or at least your foundation, a little bit more rock solid. What polarized training does is it says, hey, most of the training you can get good effect, especially if you're training for longer events, if you spend it in the lower zone, so zone 1 and 2, which is at or below your aerobic threshold. So we'll define that, and then most of the training that they're doing through the week is going to be in those zones. Initially, during a base period, all the training may be there. But ultimately, you're going to bring in some intensity so that we can increase their fitness and their sustainable power and be at their optimal for the event. So what we find is, and what polarized training has done with even some of the elite athletes, is they're not out there pounding themselves to death, working in zone 3, which is where a lot of people like to spend their time, which is kind of a moderate intense, but it's still intense. It still adds up to being something that you have to spend some time to recover from. So if you're training 5 or 6 days a week, and you're doing some hard, high-intensity intervals, and the rest of the training is in that zone 3, kind of a gray zone is what some people will describe it as, you're really never getting the full adaptation process because you're not really recovering, and the potential for overuse is really high, so overuse injury. So polarized training just puts the limits on most of your training, but when you do get into the intervals, when you're ready to do it, it's going to be really hard. So you're going to be putting on a demand that's above, at least above or near that anaerobic threshold, and sometimes even higher. And then you're going to give yourself enough recovery after those workouts to get the full benefit from that type of a quality type training. If you train too much in the upper zones, you don't get the full effect. You peak early in your training, and your risk of injury goes way up. So polarized training is either on the really top end, you're spending a short period of time during the week relative in these high intensity intervals, and then the remainder of the higher percentage of the time is in that zone 1 and 2 level. So again, it gets you to the finish line for one reason without injury, and you're not going to be overbaked for the race. So you're going to come in fresh so that you're at your optimal to perform. I think for the over 50 crowd, we just need more time to recover. So we do have obviously elite athletes that can train harder more often and cope with it very well. But for us who are older, recovery is an issue. You can do a well-managed workout or some kind of a structured workout, and it's going to take you maybe twice the time to recover as some of the younger athletes. So by looking at a polarized approach, you're guaranteeing that you're going to be getting that recovery time in. And I think you're a little bit more apt to get the full benefit of the training because you're controlling a lot of your training and keeping it at the lower intensity.